The 2023 college football season has begun, and the class of 2024 is off to a hot start. I'm going to give you 5 players that have impressed in week 1 of the college football season. I'm going to give you a direct value comparison to a dynasty asset on your roster, and then tie those two things together with a rookie draft projection. It should give you a really good idea of some standouts in the 2024 class and how to value them against your dynasty rosters and your 2024 draft picks. Let's start here with the belle of the ball, the week 1 darling. It is Keon Coleman out of Florida State. Now, Keon Coleman is a 6'4" wide receiver, plays well along the boundary. He was somebody who really stood out in my summer scouting evaluation. And I got to tell you, I was excited to see him week 1 against LSU, but even I was surprised at just how much he dominated a strong SEC secondary. Now, Keon Coleman is a Michigan State transfer. He actually outplayed and outperformed Jaden Reed in the Michigan State offense last year. And to be kind, folks, it was not a friendly offense for wide receivers. He ended up putting up 58 receptions for 798 yards and 7 touchdowns for the Spartans last year, averaging just under 14 yards per reception. But he transfers over to Florida State, a much more wide receiver friendly offense. And it's clear that the coaching staff made it a priority to get Keon Coleman involved. In week 1, he went 9 receptions for 122 yards and 3 touchdowns for the Seminoles. Again, folks, Florida State, they didn't open up against Southeast Louisiana. They opened up against LSU, an SEC opponent, and so Keon Coleman came to play. What makes it even more impressive, in my opinion, is that Keon Coleman transferred to Florida State after spring practice at Michigan State. So he really only had fall camp to earn the lead wide receiver role, and it's clear to me that he has earned that role. And his Devy stock, in turn, is exploding right now. He's jumping up draft boards. In the DLF mock that you would have seen me do over the summer, I had him going 207 in that rookie mock. Today, I think he's much more of a late first-round pick. I think he's going to have a legitimate claim to being wide receiver 2, and you could call that an early season overreaction. But early on in the season, we have to make some quick Devy adjustments. And Keon Coleman is absolutely the biggest riser from the first week. So to give you a value comparison on your dynasty roster, think of a guy like George Pickens. That to me is somebody who would have the same value. So if you were going to trade for Keon Coleman right now in a league, I would say that George Pickens is the type of player you would have to offer. Somebody who is a locked-in wide receiver 3 this season with wide receiver 2 upside overall, so a top 24 wide receiver upside, and has the ability to put up wide receiver 1 weeks. He's a boundary receiver. He can go up, get the ball. He can make big plays. So from a value perspective, I would consider Keon Coleman in the same vein right now as George Pickens. I project Keon Coleman to be a late first-round rookie pick in 2024, and I think that's about what you would pay for George Pickens right now. All right, it's time for the Caleb Williams obligatory price check. Now, heading into the season, he was the Superflex 101, and to nobody's surprise, he's still holding that value as we head into the start of the NFL season and as we start to get into the thick of it here in the college football season. So off of the first 2 weeks of the season, Caleb Williams has done nothing to suggest that he is anything less than everything that we expected from him. Looking at his first couple of games, he opened up here against San Jose State. He went 18 for 25, completed 72% of his passes. He threw for 4 touchdowns. The following week, he got Nevada, 18 attempts, 24 completions. That's 75% completion, 319 yards, and 5 passing touchdowns in those games. He looks mobile. He looks confident. We've seen some great examples of downfield passing ability. And so Caleb Williams does seem to be on a cruise course here to being the number 1 overall draft pick. It'll be interesting to see as USC gets into the heart of their schedule. They pull Colorado in week 4, and then they get into a run where they go Notre Dame, Utah, some of these tougher defenses that NFL teams are going to be very locked in on. So if you are going to go and trade for Caleb Williams right now, the dynasty player that I think he has the most direct value to is Justin Fields. Now, Justin Fields was a first-round startup pick in most Superflex drafts this offseason. He was kind of going anywhere from 9, 10, 11, and part of that value has been driven by the big drop-off after the first tier of quarterbacks. Now, as a rookie, I think Caleb Williams will go in the first round of dynasty startup drafts, which is a bold take. Like, that is a large claim. It sounds really easy and simple to say right now, but even think back to, was Trevor Lawrence going in the first round of startup rookie drafts? Or I'm sorry, just startup dynasty drafts? No, not necessarily, right? But I think Caleb Williams is that special level of talent. So that's why my direct comparison there for him is Justin Fields. He will be the 101 in a super flex league. I think if you were going to go up and get Justin Fields, I don't know that you would pay the 101 for him, but I don't think that you could trade the 102 for Justin Fields right now. So that's about as close as a value comparison as I could give you. Caleb Williams continues to be a special prospect, and he continues to be on track to be the 101 and be a first-round dynasty startup pick in 2024. All right, so everybody knows Caleb Williams, but everybody might not know Devin Neal. The running back out of Kansas is one of my sneaky top prospects. I think he's going to be a major riser through the draft process. And in week 1 against Missouri State, he did nothing to deny those priors for me. Against Missouri State, he went 13 for 94, with a touchdown. He had 3 receptions, got a touchdown through the air as well. And he averaged over 7 yards per reception for the Jayhawks. Last year, he was just shy of 1,100 rushing yards, and he did score 9 times on the ground for the Jayhawks. Through the air, he had 21 receptions for 183 yards and a touchdown in the 2023 season. Early on, Neal has showed vision. He showed explosiveness. I love his hands. I think he's going to be a really versatile player. If you're talking about his dynasty value right now, I think the best comparison is Alvin Kamara. And I picked Alvin Kamara really intentionally because I think if you're a roster that's looking to already look ahead to 2024, you're doing some honest assessment, you've probably been trying to trade Alvin Kamara all offseason and haven't been able to. Now with the news of his suspension easing up, right, it's only 3 games. And even if you want to wait a week or 2 into the NFL season, kind of get that discount on it, flip Alvin Kamara for a guy like Devin Neal, a running back who's going to be rising up through the draft process. I think Devin Neal's value is going to land somewhere between an early to mid-second round pick in rookie drafts next year. He's going to be one of those guys that has a lot of fan favorites that pushes up his ADP, which is why I think he could even sneak into the first round of some rookie drafts next year, but it's a loaded class. So to be safe, I'd say early to mid-second round for Devin Neal. And I think if you were flipping Alvin Kamara straight up right now, it would be hard to get a late first round pick, but you definitely should be able to secure an early second round pick. Devin Neal, running back out of Kansas, he's looked good early, and he's been one of my top targets throughout the offseason. All right, next up is Drake Maye. And Drake Maye to me is really interesting because I think he's the quarterback that we're going to have the most debate on their value, right? Caleb Williams to me is by far the 101, and then it's going to be Drake Maye. And the question is going to be, how does Drake Maye stack up against the rest of the quarterback class? And before I give you my value comparison for Drake Maye, I just want to take a moment and point out that I have a full set of rankings that you can pull up and do this value comparison to at any point in time. It's available over at patreon.com/rookiebigboard, where you can find all of my work as well as Rookie Big Board on YouTube and Rookie Big Board on your podcast feed. All right, so getting into Drake Maye here, he came out and had a relatively tough week 1 opponent against South Carolina. And like most Drake Maye tape for me, there were ups and there was downs, but overall the takeaway was positive. So against South Carolina, Drake Maye went out here, completed 75% of his attempts, 24 for 32. He passed for 269 yards, which may sound like a little bit low of a yards per attempt average, but it's actually 8.4 and right on target with his first 2 seasons with the Tar Heels. So he had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I think overall he passed the eye test, but I've been saying all offseason, my takeaway from my summer scouting report with Drake Maye was that I need to see consistent mechanics and consistent development. So that'll be what I'm watching closely here for consistency over the next couple months. So right here, I might be a little bit lower than consensus right now on Drake Maye, but my dynasty value comparison for him is Dak Prescott. And I like Dak Prescott, so it's not a knock, right? Dak Prescott to me is a back end quarterback one. He's going to be pretty steady. He's going to be pretty consistent. He's going to put up some big weeks for you. But I think we know at this point in time, Dak Prescott has lost that, quarterback one overall on the week consistent threat. I don't know that when Drake Maye enters the league, at least right away for his first season or two, he's going to have that quarterback one overall threat. But I do think that he'll land and settle into an offense that allows him to distribute the ball, play into his strengths, play into his mobility a little bit. And if he has weapons to distribute to, then he absolutely could settle in as that back end weekly quarterback one. All right, I'm going back to a name that you may not be super familiar with yet. I'm going out to the West Coast, and I'm going to go with Oregon wide receiver Troy Franklin. Now, Troy Franklin was my the favorite scouting report that I did over the summer. I love Troy Franklin. I liked his live tape, but some guys, man, when you put them under the microscope, they really pop out even more. And he certainly popped out in week 1 against Portland State. Now, Troy Franklin he had 7 receptions for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. He looked smooth. He looked fluid, and it really matched his summer tape here. Now, Troy Franklin comes in at 6'2", 170, and a lot of folks are worried about that frame. But if you watch Troy Franklin play, he looks a lot more like Devonta Smith at his frame than Tutu Atwell does at his frame, right? Or even a guy like Tank Dell, right? Troy Franklin has the ability to win on the outside. He has the ability to win over the middle of the field. He's very comfortable working through traffic. He always creates separation, but he doesn't rely just on creating separation along the boundary and winning the deep ball. He's able to create separation on slants. He's able to create separation on comeback routes. And so Troy Franklin, to me, really popped out from week 1. But again, it was Portland State. It'll be really interesting to see over the course of the season. Don't sleep on these Pac-12 defenses. Washington, Oregon State, Utah, there's some pretty strong defenses that Troy Franklin will play over the course of this season. So NFL evaluators will absolutely have the ability to get a full understanding of how Troy Franklin can dissect defensive backs throughout the course of the season. To give you a value comparison here, Troy Franklin to me is a really nice comparison to Jahan Dotson. And I say that because if folks have been following my work for a little while now, they would know that Jahan Dotson was one of my favorite players coming out of his draft class. I have an over 80% exposure to Jahan Dotson. And just in that kind of surgical way that he understands how to use his body, create space, dissect defenses, I don't know, they just remind me of each other. And if I'm thinking of where Troy Franklin's going to go in a rookie draft in 2024, I'm thinking late first round to early second round. That was the exact range that I drafted Jahan Dotson really consistently. And now Jahan Dotson is sitting there really as that consistent wide receiver 2 with the threat to be a wide receiver 1 any week of the season. And I really think that's where Troy Franklin is going to find himself as well. It's high praise for Troy Franklin, and he's somebody that I'm definitely really excited about. If he's not on your radar yet, make sure you make a point whenever Oregon is on TV, lock in on the wide receiver playing along the boundary, number 11, Troy Franklin. All right, so there you have it. 5 standouts from the class of 2024 from the early college football season. If you have questions on any other player, go ahead, drop it in the comments here. I'll go ahead, I'll pop in, I'll answer as many as I can. And if you don't want to wait for an answer, like I said, you can head on over to patreon.com/rookiebigboard and get access to my full rankings here. It compares everybody from a college freshman all the way through NFL veterans, all on the same value scale. So you can always compare these guys as you try to rebuild and retool your rosters.